There's a radius to a life. I've been thinking about that word lately, radius. In geometry, it's the distance from the center to the edge. In a life, it's something like, how far out does your world extend? How many people are you actually in contact with? How many different places do you go? How many new things come in? How many conversations reach below the surface? At 40, my radius was large. The business was running, 3 crews working across Bangor and the surrounding towns. Helen was alive, and we had a social life. Dinners, the neighbors in and out, friends from church, the families of the children's classmates. I was driving all over Penobscot County most days. I was talking to different people, solving different problems, working with different materials. The radius was wide. I'm 82 now, and if I'm honest about the radius, really honest, it's smaller than it was at 40. The social circle has thinned. The range of daily activity is tighter. The shop is 30 steps from the back door, and I go there and I come back. I drive to the hardware store, to the post office, to the diner on Saturday mornings. I talk to David on Sundays and Susan on Thursdays, and Elaine Poulin down the road occasionally. The world has pulled in. Some of that is natural, inevitable. The radius shrinks at this age for reasons you can't control. The friends who die, the children who live far away, the body that makes some things harder. I don't pretend those things don't happen. But some of it isn't natural. Some of the shrinking is habitual, self-imposed, the result of 8 specific habits that I've identified in myself and in the people I've watched over the years. Habits that narrow the world one small degree at a time, so gradually you don't notice it happening until you're sitting at the kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon and you realize the radius has been narrowing for years. I'm 82 years old. My name is Walter, and today I want to talk about those 8 habits. Said honestly, with the stories. Sit down. There's time. The first habit is stopping saying yes to new invitations. The habit builds slowly. It starts with legitimate reasons. You're tired. The weather's bad. You don't know many of the people who'll be there. The drive is longer than you'd like. These are real reasons. And on any given occasion, the decision to stay home rather than go out is often a reasonable one. But somewhere, without noticing it happening, the reasons become the default. The no becomes the answer before the invitation is even fully received. You've stopped evaluating each invitation on its own terms and started treating all new invitations as things to be declined unless there's a compelling reason not to. And the world gets smaller as a result. Not dramatically, incrementally, one declined invitation at a time. I caught myself in this habit around 6 years ago. The Sullivans, the young couple down the road, invited me to a dinner they were having. I said no. I had a reason. Cold night, icy roads. I didn't know their friends. All true. Then they invited me to something the following spring. I said no again. Different reason. The third time they invited me, I noticed something. I'd said no before I'd finished reading the note, before I knew what the occasion was. No had become the reflex. I went to that third one. I sat next to a man named Edgar from Rockland, who'd fished out of the harbor for 30 years and who had the most extraordinary stories I'd heard in a decade. I drove home at 10 o'clock, which is later than I normally stay out, and I wasn't tired. I was alive in a way I hadn't been after a Tuesday evening in quite some time. Edgar and I had coffee twice more before he moved down to be near his daughter in New Hampshire. I'd have missed him entirely if I hadn't gone to that dinner. The yes is a practice. You have to keep doing it or you lose the muscle for it. And the muscle for saying yes to new things is one of the main ways the world stays large. I want to tell you more about what the no was costing me in those years when I'd started defaulting to it. Because I didn't see it as a cost at the time. I saw it as prudence, as appropriate management of a limited energy supply, as being honest about my circumstances. But here's what was actually happening. Every no narrowed the range of the possible. And the range of the possible, the sense that the world contains options, that different things might happen on different days, is part of what makes a life feel open rather than closed. When I said no to the Sullivan dinner the first time, I was one no lighter. When I said no to the spring gathering, I was two no's lighter. And by the time I declined the third thing without knowing what it was, I'd established something. Not just a pattern, but an identity. The man who doesn't go out. The man who is most comfortable at home. The man whose world has grown to be exactly as large as the distance from the kitchen to the shop. I don't think the world is supposed to get that small while I still have the choice to keep it larger. There's a particular thing that happens when you say yes and go. When you are in a room with people you don't know well, doing something outside your established routine. And it's hard to name exactly, but it has something to do with being reminded that you exist in relation to others. That you're not only the man at the kitchen table. You're also a person at a dinner table, next to Edgar, surprising him with something you know and being surprised in turn. That experience of existing in relation to others is something that contracts very quickly when you stop going out. You become, after a while, the observer of your own life rather than a participant in a larger one. And the observer's world is always smaller than the participant's. I want to be careful here because I don't mean this politically. I mean something broader. There's a way that intellectual life narrows as people get older. Not because the intelligence declines, but because the appetite for the new and the challenging gradually gets replaced by the appetite for the familiar and the confirming. I've watched this in myself. In the early years after Helen died, I started reading more than I ever had actually, because the evenings were long and the shop was quiet and the books were good company. I read history, I read some science, I read biography. And in the first couple of years, I read broadly. Things I didn't know about, things I wasn't sure I'd like. And then, somewhere around year 3 or 4, the reading narrowed. I kept going back to the same period of history that had always interested me. The Civil War, the railroads, the particular turn of the late 19th century. Good material, all of it. But I'd stopped being genuinely surprised by what I was reading, because I was always in territory I already knew reasonably well. It wasn't until Lily left a book on my kitchen table. She'd brought it for me, a book about the geology of the Gulf of Maine, something I'd never have picked up myself, that I felt again what I'd felt in those first years of reading. The genuine surprise of learning something I had no framework for. The experience of being genuinely new to a subject. The book sat on the table for 2 weeks before I opened it, and then I opened it, and I couldn't put it down. I read about the bedrock that Maine sits on and how old it is, the particular kind of stone in the walls of this house, the ice sheet that shaped the coast I've lived on my whole life. None of it was what I expected. All of it was real. The world got larger in a way that didn't require me to leave the kitchen table. What you read, and the breadth of what you read, is one of the primary ways the interior world either expands or contracts after 65. Keep it wide. Read what surprises you. Read what you don't already know. The third habit is measuring your days against your best days. I've talked about comparison before in other conversations, but I want to be specific here about a particular kind of comparison that I think is one of the most powerful forces in shrinking the world after 65. When you've lived a full and active life, and most people who are over 65 have, you have memories of days that were genuinely extraordinary. The day the biggest contract came in, the summer the children were young and the house was full, the morning you and your wife drove up the coast for no reason at all, and the light on the water was a specific shade you've never quite seen again. Those days are in you. They're reference points. And after 65, when the pace of life has changed and the extraordinary days come less often, there's a temptation to measure every ordinary day against those reference points. to feel the Tuesday for what it fails to be rather than for what it actually is. I did this in a specific way in my early 70s. I'd be in the shop on a good afternoon, light right, tools sharp, good piece of wood under my hands, and I'd find myself thinking about 1985, about what the shop was in 1985, when we were running 3 crews and the business was at its peak and I was at my physical best and 41 years old and the work was everything. And the shop of today, just me, just the small things I make now, the cradles and the cutting boards and the toy boxes, the shop of today would shrink against the comparison. Not because it was bad, because it was being measured against something it couldn't match. Helen caught me in this once, in the late 1990s, and she said something that I've kept. She said, "Walter, the 1985 shop can't be here today. The 2024 shop is, and you'll either be in it or you won't." I try to be in it. Most days now, I manage it. The today shop is good. It smells the same. The tools are the same, mostly. The wood still tells me what it wants to become. It's not 1985. It's today. And today is where the work actually is. I want to add something specific about this habit, because I think the comparison to best days doesn't just apply to the work. It applies to everything. To meals, to conversations, to the quality of an afternoon. And the accumulation of those comparisons, the constant measurement of the ordinary present against the extraordinary past, can make the present feel almost uniformly insufficient, like a long series of disappointments. I had a conversation with David about 3 years ago where I said something that surprised me when I heard it come out of my mouth. He'd asked how I'd been spending my evenings, and I said, "Oh, nothing much, just the fire and a book." He said, "That sounds nice, Pop." And I said, "Not like it used to be." And David got quiet, and after a moment he said, "What do you mean, used to be?" And I tried to explain that the evenings used to have Helen in them, that a fire and a book used to mean Helen in her chair with her quilting and the radio on low, and the particular quality of a shared evening that a solitary evening doesn't have. And I meant it. It was true. But I heard what I'd done. I'd taken a good thing, the fire, the book, the quiet evening, and made it feel insufficient by holding it next to something it couldn't be. David said simply, "But the fire is still good." It is. The fire is still good, on its own terms, not as a lesser version of something, but as its own thing. And I've had to practice receiving it that way. This is a specific and subtle one, and it costs something I wouldn't have expected. By the time you're over 65, you've had enough difficult conversations to know that they happen. The hard thing that needed to be said, the confrontation you'd been avoiding, the question you finally asked. And you've also had enough experience with the difficult conversations to know that your anticipation of them is often much worse than the conversations themselves. But the rehearsing continues anyway. The brain runs the scenario. You lie awake or you sit in the chair and you run the conversation you might need to have with the doctor about the test result that came back. Or with David about the thing you've been meaning to say for 3 years. Or with the neighbor about the situation that's been building. You run it in detail. You imagine what they'll say. You prepare your responses. Most of those conversations never happen. The test result is fine. The thing with David resolves without a conversation. The neighbor situation dissipates on its own. But I've spent, hours inside the rehearsal. Inside the difficult conversations that don't happen with the people who won't say the things they say in the scenario. And those hours in the rehearsal are hours not spent in the actual day, the actual room, the actual fire. The rehearsal shrinks the world, not by making the world physically smaller, but by replacing the present with a future that mostly doesn't arrive. I've tried to catch it when the rehearsal starts, to name it to myself, "Walter, you're in the scenario again." and then to come back to whatever is actually in front of me. The wood, the coffee, the window and the cedars, the actual day, which is different from the rehearsed one in every particular. The fifth habit is letting the news become the whole of what you know about the world. I'll say up front that I'm not a heavy news consumer. I read the paper in the morning and I listen to the radio sometimes, and that's about the extent of it. But I've watched this habit in other people, particularly older people who live alone, and I want to name it clearly because I think it's one of the most effective world shrinkers there is. When the news, the national news, the political news, the daily cycle of things going wrong, becomes the primary lens through which you understand the current state of the world starts to look like what the news shows you, which is a world that is largely in crisis, largely polarized, largely threatening, largely going in the wrong direction. That picture is not false. Those things are happening, but it's incomplete. The news shows you the wrong things, by design, not out of malice, but because the things that go right, the slow accumulations of ordinary goodness and human decency, and things working the way they're supposed to, those don't make news. The neighbor who shovels your walk without asking is not news. The young couple down the road whose baby is healthy and whose back porch holds up through the winter is not news. The Thursday phone call with your daughter that makes you both laugh is not news. If the news is your primary source of information about the world is going to seem worse than it is. And a world that seems worse than it is a world you want to engage with less. You pull in. You watch more news to stay informed about the threats. You pull in more. What I found helps is the deliberate counterweight. For every piece of news I take in, I try to notice one thing that isn't news. One thing in the immediate world that's fine, or good, or better than expected. The chickadee at the feeder, the grain in the wood, the fact that the truck started on the first try this morning in the cold. The world I can see from this kitchen window is not in crisis, and that world is also real. The sixth habit is avoiding conversations that require something of you. By this I mean the conversations that go somewhere, the ones where you have to actually think, where you're asked something you don't immediately know how to answer, where the other person says something surprising and you have to recalibrate, where the real and complicated interior of another person comes into contact with the real and complicated interior of yourself. Those conversations are more demanding than the easy ones, the weather, the news, the health update. And after a long life of them, after a certain age, there's a pull toward the easy ones, toward the surface, toward the transactions that don't require much. I felt this pull particularly in the period right after Helen died. The difficult conversations, the ones that went somewhere, suddenly required more energy than I had. I'd find myself steering conversations toward safer ground, giving shorter answers than the question deserved, not asking the follow-up that would have taken things deeper. And the people I talked to, over time, learned the limits. They stopped going deeper because I'd shown them where the limit was. And the conversations we had were pleasant, but not particularly alive. What brought me back to the deeper conversations was, again, the grandchildren. Lily especially. She doesn't respect the safe limit. She asks things like, "What do you think about that actually?" Or, "Was that always true for you? Or did you change your mind at some point?" Questions that require you to have actually thought about something. And when she asks them and I answer honestly, the conversation goes somewhere I couldn't have predicted, and the somewhere is almost always worth going. The difficult conversation is one of the primary ways the world stays alive and large. It requires effort. The effort is worth it. I want to tell you about a specific conversation that changed something, because I think the specific is always more useful than the general. Susan called me about 8 months ago, not on the usual Thursday, on a Monday, which made me pick up immediately. And she started by saying she'd been reading some poetry, which surprised me. Susan isn't a poetry reader, never has been. She'd found a poem in a hospital waiting room. A nurse friend had left it there. She read me a few lines over the phone. I don't usually respond well to poetry. That's not my natural register. But I listened, and the poem was about time, about the way the later part of a life looks like slowing down from outside, but feels from inside like a deepening. And something in it landed, and instead of saying what I'd have said in my easier years, "That sounds nice, Susan, thanks for sharing that," I said, "That last part, say it again." She read it again, and then we talked for an hour about what the poem meant, about what deepening feels like from inside 65, inside 70, inside 82, about what she finds herself knowing now that she couldn't have known at 30, about what the work of nursing has given her that no other work could have, about what I have now, what the years of carpentry and loss and quiet have accumulated into, that I couldn't have had at 40. It was one of the best conversations I've had with my daughter, and it happened because I said, "Say it again," instead of, "That sounds nice," because I let the poem ask something of me instead of receiving it at the surface. The surface is easy. The surface keeps you comfortable. The going deeper is harder and better, and the thing that keeps the world from becoming the surface. I want to say this carefully because I know it sounds like advice, and I've said I don't believe in giving advice nobody asked for. What I want to say is what happened to me, and what it looked like when I caught it. In the second year after Helen died, I lost the structure of my days. Not entirely. I still got up, still made coffee, still went to the shop sometimes. But the edges of the days had softened. Meals happened when I was hungry, rather than at particular times. The shop time was irregular. Sleep was whenever the chair became too uncomfortable to sit in. The rhythms that had organized my life for decades had, without Helen's rhythms to organize alongside mine, become approximate. The approximate day is a smaller day than the structured one, not necessarily in what happens in it, but in how present you are to what happens in it. The structure creates a kind of attention. When supper is at a certain hour, the hours before it have a shape. When the shop is in the morning has a purpose. The structure is a scaffold for presence. Without it, the day becomes something you move through rather than something you inhabit. I rebuilt the structure slowly. 3 rhythms, as I've said in other conversations. The morning coffee at the kitchen table, the shop time, the evening fire. 3 anchor points that give the day its shape. The point is not the specific structure. The point is having one. Any one. The practice of something at approximately the same time each day, which gives the day an edge and makes you more likely to be actually in it rather than simply passing through it. I want to tell you what specifically happened when I let the structure dissolve, because I think naming the experience might help someone recognize it. The approximate day, the day without real edges, has a particular quality to it. It feels, from inside, a little like floating. Not unpleasant exactly, just untethered. There's no real beginning and no real end. Things happen or they don't. Time passes without a clear sense of where it went. At the end of an approximate day, I couldn't usually say what I'd done. Not because I'd done nothing. I'd moved around, done various things. But the things hadn't had a shape. They'd been more like drifting than like inhabiting. And after several months of approximate days, the approximate quality had started to become the norm, my baseline, what a day was supposed to feel like. And I'd started to feel, dimly, that something had changed in me, that I was less present than I'd been, less engaged, less attached to the texture of the hours. Helen's days were structured. She had things that happened at particular times. The garden in the morning when the weather was right. The reading in the afternoon, the quilting in the evening, the Saturday shopping. They weren't rigid. She was flexible about all of it. But the structure was there. And the structure gave her something to be present for, a shape to be inside. When I rebuilt mine, it wasn't instant. The first few weeks felt slightly artificial, like I was following a schedule I'd imposed on myself from outside, rather than living a life that had its own natural rhythm. But gradually, the rhythms became real again. The morning coffee became the actual morning coffee, waited for, savored, given its full due. The shop time became the actual shop time. The evening became the actual evening. And the day had edges again, a beginning and a middle and an end, which meant there was something to be present to from beginning to end, which is, I think, a much better way to spend whatever days remain. Let me say what I mean by that. There's a way of thinking about your own life that places its center of gravity in the past, where the main events, the significant turning points, the things that constituted the life, are understood to be behind you. What remains is aftermath, the living out of something whose plot has already been told. You know the characters. You know how most of the story goes. You're in the late chapters, and the late chapters are where things wind down. That way of thinking about your life is not dishonest exactly. In some respects, it's accurate. The early years, the middle years, the building years, those are behind me. The death of my wife is behind me. Most of the work is behind me. But here's what it misses. The late chapters of a life are not less real than the earlier ones. The things that happen in them are not less significant. The relationships that develop or deepen in the last decade are as real as any that came before. The understanding you arrive at, the things you finally figure out in your 70s and 80s that you couldn't have figured out at 40, those are among the most valuable things you'll ever have. And the mornings, the fires, the grandchildren, the conversations, they're not epilogue. They're the story continuing. I slid into the epilogue thinking for about 3 years after Helen died. I told myself, not in so many words, that the story was basically done, that what remained was the winding down of something that had been told. What broke through it was a conversation with Lily, which I've described in other contexts. She said I was a library that was still open, and she meant it about the stories I carry from people who are gone. But I took it as something larger, as a statement about the continuing. The library doesn't close until it closes. Until it actually closes, it's still open. There are still books in it. There are still people coming through the door. I'm still open, at 82, still here, still in the story. Not the early chapters, no, not the middle ones, but the ones that are happening now. The particular richness of the late pages, when you know more than you did and have more to offer than earlier versions of yourself could have given. Those chapters are not lesser. They're different, and different is not the same as over. I want to stay with this one a little longer, because I think the epilogue thinking is one of the more dangerous habits on this list. Not because it causes obvious harm, because it causes invisible harm. It's a way of opting out that doesn't look like opting out. When I was living in the epilogue thinking, I was still doing things, still going to the shop, still calling the children, still getting up in the morning and making coffee and watching the cedars and doing all the visible things. But underneath the doing was a quality of just getting through, a sense that the main event was over and what I was doing now was cleanup, running out the clock. And that quality, that just getting through quality, is invisible to most people. The people who loved me didn't see it. They saw me doing the things. They didn't see that the doing had become maintenance rather than living. What Helen would have seen. She'd have seen it. She saw things in me before I saw them myself. But she wasn't there. What actually broke through it, and I've mentioned Lily's library comment in other conversations, but I want to be specific about the effect of it, was the realization that the things I know, the things I carry, the things I can give, those have not already happened. They're happening now. Every conversation where I tell Lily something about her great-great-grandfather that nobody else can tell her, that's happening now. Every Thursday call where Susan and I go deeper than we went 5 years ago, that's happening now. Every morning at the kitchen table where I understand something about my own life that I couldn't have understood at 40, that's happening now. The richest version of myself, the most knowing, the most honest, the most patient, the most fully arrived at, that version is the one that exists now. Not the 40-year-old who was faster and stronger. This one, the one that has all of this behind it. That's not epilogue, that's the fruition. And the fruition deserves to be inhabited as fully as anything that came before it. I want to say something before I close, because I've been talking about 8 habits that shrink the world. And I want to be honest about something. The world shrinks for reasons you can't control. The friends die. The children move away. The body changes. The energy is different. Some of the shrinking is simply what happens at this age, and resisting it is neither possible nor always the right response. But some of the shrinking is habitual, and the habits, these 8 or whatever yours are, those can be examined. Those can be changed, at least in part. Not all at once, not dramatically, but you can say yes to one more invitation. You can read one thing that surprises you. You can have one conversation that goes somewhere you didn't expect. You can treat one ordinary Tuesday as its own thing rather than a measure of what's been lost. You can stop treating your life as epilogue. Those small things, done with some consistency, keep the radius from shrinking to the point where only you are inside it. And a life where only you are inside it is a lonely life, even if you're at peace with the solitude, even if you've made your peace with the quiet. The people are still out there. The conversations are still possible. The surprising book is on someone's table somewhere, waiting to be left on yours. The invitation hasn't been sent yet, but it will come. Say yes when it does. If anything I said today reached you, you can subscribe to walk with me a while longer. I read every comment. Tell me which of the 8 habits you recognized. Tell me what has kept your world wide or what you're working on. I'd like to hear. Take care of yourself. Say yes to something this week. Go where you haven't gone. Talk to someone you haven't talked to. Let the radius stay as wide as you can keep it. The fire's still going. I'll see you next time.